Hello, I'm Jahara. Welcome to another episode of In the Line of Wire, the webcast. I have with me today another woman for a change. I'm fed up of interviewing just men. Special person, ShahidaSaleem, who is the chairperson of her own company, Dots Technologies. She's also the chairperson of the Standing Committee for IT of the FPCCI. For those of you who don't know what FPCCI is, that is the Federation of Pakistan Chambers of Commerce and Industry. Hi, Shahida. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jahan. It's a pleasure to be here.
Good. Now we're going to have a very interesting conversation. Controversial, if since you're a part of it, it has to be controversial, right? So tell us, what are you up to these days? I know that's a very open and tell us.
Well, pretty much the same old things I've been up to for the past 8 years, trying to convince people that, IT is a little bit more than just doing programming and ERP systems. We're working on some fantastic projects in ICT for development.
Okay, tell us about the projects. I know you have a company, Sehat First, of which you're also chairperson.
Yes.
Okay.
I've got a few chairmanships going on. Well, actually, they're chairwomanships now.
Chairwomanships, quite right.
Well, Sehat First, we're actually using telemedicine to connect patients in rural areas to doctors in big cities.
Okay.
And it's been a really, really interesting experience because we've gotten to experiment with all kinds of technologies. We're working with the Indus Hospital. So we're using RFIDs to track pneumonia patients. We are using mobile phones to do...
So no, tell me, let's stop right there. You are using RFIDs to track pneumonia patients. So what do you do every time they cough? The RFID tag tells you where they are, or what? I mean, what's the purpose?
Almost, but they got to cough in our clinic. Other than that, it's okay.
What's the purpose of the RFID? Seriously.
We actually, the Indus Hospital is doing a TB and pneumonia tracking project with the World Health Organization, the WHO. And one of the biggest problems that we have is TB patients, pneumonia patients don't go in for follow-up. So they get diagnosed, but then they don't actually come back for their medications and all of these kinds of things. And one of the biggest reasons is they don't have the money to get the transport to go back to the hospital or all of these kinds of things. So they actually come into our clinics and we're hooked up and we do all the monitoring, and then it gets entered in. They have a small RFID tag that we scan in through the mobile phone, and all the data goes over to the hospital.
Okay, terrific. That's great. So they don't have to travel long distances.
They don't have to travel long distances.
Which is the entire purpose of using technology.
Yeah. We actually, believe it or not, delivered a baby via telemedicine.
Oh, terrific. And
the doctor was sitting on Shara Faisal. The baby was being born in Ibrahim Hedri, and we had a webcam. And the doctor guided the entire delivery over the webcam.
Okay, who was at the other end though, in the village?
We had the patient herself, and we had a lady...
Naturally, you need the patient.
Well, it's kind of hard giving birth to a baby without the patient.
Right.
But yes. So we had the patient, and we also had a lady health visitor who was there. But it was a complex pregnancy. She wouldn't have been able to do it by herself without the doctor. And so this was our first Sehat First baby. Terrific. She was a baby girl, 7.5 pounds.
You should have announced it, so all of us would have sent Pampers and food,
I'm announcing
milk
it now.
products.
She's only a month old.
Guys, see, this is the Sehat First baby who was born through telemedicine. If you have anything that you want to give to that baby, you can contact Rabia Gharib and she will send it on.
If you want, you can go to our website. You can even see pictures of the baby.
Okay, can you give us the website address?
www.sehatfirst.com.
Terrific. Okay, tell us what else you're doing. Sehat First is...
Well, that's Sehat First. We're also working on developing technologies for doing long distance inventory management systems in rural areas.
Okay.
So we're designing a mobile based application which is going to use SMS, GPRS to actually do tracking of the inventory, so that small entrepreneurs, small store owners in these areas who really don't have access to internet and all of these things can also keep tabs on their inventory, do management, price management, all of these kinds of things.
Okay, so but where is their inventory going to be?
In their store.
No, but they're in the villages, right?
They're in the village.
Right.
They have a small coca store.
Right.
So they're selling product.
Right.
But
how do they keep the product right behind them, right?
No, they have the product right behind them, but they have to order the product. They have to sell the product.
Right.
They have to keep track of their profits. How do they do all of that?
Okay.
Right? All of that right now is being done manually, and when you're doing it manually, it becomes very, very tough because you can't really expand. So if you want to start expanding and go from being this tiny little coca to a larger store, you need to learn how to do all of these things.
So do you connect them to their distributors and larger stores?
Yeah.
Oh, great, great.
And so we're actually creating the supply chain for them.
Terrific. And how many cocas have got connected so far? Or is it still in the works?
It's still in the works. We still have about 15 of them so far. But we're hoping to go much larger than that.
That's great. That's great. Yeah. Now, you're also working in the area of education.
Yes.
Tell us a little about that.
Well, education has always been my first love, my passion. And I think that, when I look at Pakistan and the situation that Pakistan's in right now, somehow everything just leads right back to education. And in the education area, we have so many issues. We have issues, we don't have teachers showing up at the schools. We don't have kids actually learning the material, the curriculum. There's schools without teachers at all.
This is in towns and villages,
Towns,
right?
Villages, even in the cities, in our public school systems, the government schools especially. And when you realize that, we have such a huge population, 17 million people, how many of them are actually in private schools? The rest of them are all in government schools. And until we start fixing those, we really don't have much hope as a nation. And IT for me has always been one of those enablers that can really make that happen. And it involves all areas. So we're looking at doing teacher education through use of IT, distance education, vocational technical education through IT, teacher certification and accreditation through IT. So really creating those kinds of systems. And then not last and not least is what did the students actually learn? The learning assessment, which we seem to count numbers of everything, but we never actually stop to think,
quality,
the quality.
Correct.
So,
so how are you doing that? You've developed the systems, but is the government buying?
The government hasn't bought it. We actually did a pilot project, you know about it. Pasha was nice enough to give us an award for the project. But we actually was successful in doing a pilot project for about 150 schools. The government didn't want to implement it because it brought in too much transparency.
Now tell me, okay, so we need to convince the government that these systems need to be in place if we are going to improve the quality of education in the public
Well, I think it's
system.
not just the quality of education. If I think, we've had a lot of talk about IT policy and policy in general and all of these kinds of things. I think not just we, but I think the government tends to take IT and put it as an industry and as a separate thing from everything, in this little silo, and it's separate from everything else that they're doing.
And we are also assessed on the basis of being a silo, not with, on the basis of what impact we have on everything.
Exactly. And I think, we as an industry need to help the government realize that, IT goes beyond that silo. IT is something that has an impact on the health, on the education, on the economic development, on the overall economy, and so many diverse areas. And so they really need to start looking at IT not in that silo, but how do we use this as a tool to help us achieve everything else we need to be doing?
Correct.
For
how
me,
do we do that?
Advocacy, lots and lots of advocacy. And I think that we need to make our voices heard.
Right.
I think we need, as an industry, Pasha, I think definitely is one of the organizations that should be taking a lead in this, where meeting with the people that matter, the people that are making these decisions, the Planning Commission is one of them. I know that we have an IT guru already working with them, but I think the vision really needs to be there and shared with them and getting their ownership of that vision. Media is definitely one thing, we're doing some of that now, but I think it has to be much stronger, much stronger.
So we need to actually strategize and figure out how we are going to get into this advocacy in a serious way. We've been doing it in little bits, but that's not enough. And we need to, I think, don't we need to sort of customize it for different people? Like, for the IT community, advocacy can be very, very clearly, we can use terms and things that the IT community can understand. But if you're going to take the same thing to government, it needs to be put in a different way. And if you're going to put it to the media, it needs to be even simpler because you are trying to reach a broader community of people who may not understand technological terms and what you are trying to achieve?
What you're trying to say is that you have to, like, I'm not a techie. So
I'm not either, but you and I understand a lot of the terms.
No, you're right. We definitely need to get out of techie speak.
Yeah.
And we need to start talking their language. And their language is in terms of dollars and cents. It's in terms of, you know, what kind of a macroeconomy, economic impact these things are going to have. How does this affect Pakistan in terms of its global positioning in the world?
And in the long term, not today, tomorrow,
exactly.
but in the long term.
And I think that's very, very important. And these are things, you know, I think we're at a real pivot point in Pakistan's history. And we have a chance that I think very, very few people get. You actually have a chance to shape the future of a country. How many people can say that, you know, they got a chance to do something like that? We do. We actually do have that opportunity right now. We have the chance. We're in positions where we can go and talk to these people. And I think that if we can convince them, you will see the downslide that's been going, at least, if not start going up, at least stop the downslide.
No, it will go up.
It will go up.
If we are involved, it has to. So, Shahida, common perception is that IT, you know, what is it? It only affects 1 or 2% of the economy, of the population of Pakistan. Why should we even bother with IT?
Well, I mean, I totally disagree with the perception that it only affects 1 or 2% of the population. Okay. IT is here to stay. Right. And it affects, I would say, 95% of the population.
Not presently, right?
Presently.
How?
In every way, shape or form. There is some connection. You use a mobile phone?
Yes.
That's IT. How, you know what our mobile phone penetration is in this country right now? If you have a mobile phone, you are GPS enabled. Yeah. That means you have access to the internet.
Yeah, but most people do not have smartphones, right?
Even without a smartphone. Okay. You don't need a smartphone. I can show you right now, okay, in a place like Jumma Goat, where the average income is 2,000 rupees a month.
Right.
The average literacy rate is 2%.
Right.
Not 40%, which is our national rates, 2%.
Okay.
Okay. No education. No education. They're all using technology.
Right. And what do they use technology for, other than making the calls?
They're using technology, they're SMSing in English.
Oh, terrific.
Okay.
My office boy does that also.
Yes.
And he doesn't know
This
English.
is somebody who doesn't know how to read and write, but he knows how to SMS. I find that amazing. So somewhere along the line he learned.
Correct.
Okay. We have telecenters set up, and guess what? They're surfing the net. And they're surfing the net for all sorts of things.
What are they looking for? And everything's in English.
Everything is in English, but we have a wonderful site called parktranslation.com.
Yes.
Which they are using.
Which is one of the first companies that appeared on In the Line of Wire.
And if you are listening, thank you, because all of those people love the site. We have been using it every day. They go on it, they find the sites, they can read it because it's in Urdu. Where they can't read it, they actually have the person standing there. By the way, they pay him a rupee to read each website to them out loud. So the guy is making money doing it.
Right.
But it's amazing the kinds of things, and they're using it for everything. They're looking for fashion, they're looking for recipes, they're looking for jobs, they're looking for linkages. And I find it amazing because they're doing all the same things that you and I do on it. So I don't see much of a difference. And I think that on our part, or at least on the decision makers' part, there's a bit of an arrogance. And that arrogance is, oh, if you're poor, you're different from me.
Exactly.
Poverty doesn't make a person different.
Or stupid.
Or stupid. And I find that they come up with things that I would never have dreamt of doing. They come up with uses that are mind-boggling. They've been using paint to create posters and sell their goods.
Terrific.
And they're printing them out.
Do they have any training, or do they just learn?
They have very little training. We've been doing the ICT for the ICT for All Microsoft curriculum with them. It's a 1 day, 2 day sort of training thing. The rest they're doing on their own.
That's amazing.
And the best part is most of them are kids.
Well, kids take to, for them technology.
Most of them are kids, and they come over, they spend, they hang out, and so now instead of being outside playing snooker and gambling, they're in the computer center.
But how many telecenters do we have out there?
We have quite a few, but unfortunately not all of them are operational, because the government's idea of a telecenter also includes the PCO version, where you have a fax machine and a telephone with no computer, but that's still a telecenter according to the
Okay, no, but in real number terms, the kind of telecenters you're talking about, how many are out there throughout Pakistan?
Throughout Pakistan, well, according to the government numbers, we have over 175,000 telecenters.
But some of them are PCOs.
But a lot of them are that. The Rabtagar project and the PSO project. So if you take all of those out, I don't think we have more than maybe 1,000 max.
Okay, so we need to increase that now.
Yeah, hugely. What we need to do is actually take the existing telecenters and convert them.
Okay, yeah.
If we could do that, that would be the easiest thing in the world to do. And I think the USF has already started working on that. They're doing some work, and they're in the process of getting a consultant to do the study, but that's going to take them 3 years to get the consultant to actually write the report, by which time all the data will be outdated. So we'll start all over again.
Isn't that always the way? Tell me, ICT for development is something that some of us have been very excited about for a long time. And there are individual efforts that are happening across the country, people who just haven't waited for somebody to fund them to go ahead and do things. But how do you think, what is the next step? How can we bring all these efforts together and make sure that something big happens, rather than just, individual successes, which are good, but let's spread that so that it'll benefit a larger number of Pakistanis.
In the past 8 years that I've been working, the one major change that I've noticed, and a really positive change, and without trying to butter you up, I think you have a big hand in that, is...
I like to hear things like that.
Okay. I think people have started working together. I think people have started talking to each other. And the more of that we do, the more we share with each other the work that we're doing, the more we join forces instead of trying to pull each other down, I think the larger the successes are going to be.
Right.
We're not in competition with each other.
There's so much to do.
There's so much to do. And there's so much to do together.
Right.
And I think the more people that come together, the faster we'll see results on the ground. And I know for me, it's always been about the actual impact on the ground. How does it actually help that person? And there's some really creative models. Right now, I'm part of a global think tank that is working on ICT for D. And I'm really enjoying it because I get to learn every single day. People are sharing the work they're doing, the challenges, the failures. And it's a learning
they're not
experience.
Embarrassed about the failures because they've learned from them.
Exactly. And I think that's something that we have a lot to learn from. Right. We need to really start sharing with each other and coming up with creative solutions to big problems without thinking about, is it my name? Is it my company? Is it doesn't matter whose company is it. If we can come up with the solution, you're going to make money.
Right.
That's the first thing. But B, you will have the satisfaction of knowing that at the end of the day, apart from the money and the business, you were really able to take a major issue and turn it around.
Correct.
And I think that those are some of the real challenges that we're faced with.
Okay, now we've brought more or less, with the help of people like Rabia and Selena as well, because CIO Pakistan has been able to spread the message of the kind of things that are happening around the country. And I've seen collaboration is taking place because all of us sort of talk about the advantages of working together because each of us has expertise in a certain area. Have we seen non-technology players? You and I may not be technologists, but we are entrepreneurs in the technology sector and also trying to work in the development area. Have we seen NGOs, people in different trades who are, or in the health sector, who are interested in working along with us or even understand what the advantages of working with us is?
I think there are more and more and more. Again, I think everybody's working in silos. For example, there's been a newly formed e-health association. There's quite a few people working, and they're all from the healthcare background.
Right.
There are, huge projects that are going on in telemedicine in Pakistan. But none of them, interestingly, had any interactions with our local IT industry. And I found that very, very interesting. So I think it's really a question and a matter of, as I always say, connecting the dots.
Which dots technology is supposed to do?
That's what we do, is connect the dots and bringing these pieces of the puzzle together.
Correct.
And saying, okay, the healthcare industry and the IT industry need to be talking to each other. The education sector and the IT industry need to be talking to each other. And I think that's been part of the problem. These sectors are not talking to each other.
Although, we've been saying this for quite a while. We've also been saying that the different ministries should talk to each other and work together. But
it hasn't happened.
It hasn't happened yet.
Well, I think there's several reasons that it hasn't happened. One is there are so many intrinsic problems within the sectors themselves that when you start prioritizing, you don't know where to start.
Right.
If you're an IT company and your priority is surviving this financial crunch this year, well, obviously you're not going to do anything else. And I think the same is true for the health people.
However, things changed. You remember during the earthquake how everybody got together?
Yeah.
That first telemedicine effort that was in the earthquake area, we worked together with the hospitals. You were involved, Intel was involved.
Azhar Rizvi was involved.
Yes. Actually spearheaded it, left his family during Eid to go and work with them. So, I mean, does it have to take a disaster for us to get together and work and find solutions? Because that has continued. That telemedicine team that we put together, that equipment is still being used.
Yes.
And it's being used well by the people whom we made sure had access to it. So can't we be doing more of that?
Well, you can, but there's a couple of things. One is the issue of earning a living, which most of us have to do. We're not independently wealthy.
Yeah, but come on, we find time to do all sorts of useless stuff.
No, but I have an issue with that. You see, on principle, I don't believe in NGOs. And I know this is very strange coming from somebody like me, because I know I've been labeled as the do-gooder since I'm always talking about development.
But NGOs, many NGOs have done some very good work.
Yes, yes. But if you want work like this to go on, and you want people to innovate, and you want people to do this as a full-time job, which is what we need, you have to find sustainable business models.
So some NGOs are really sustainable.
Yes and no, but
as long as they don't think that they should not be making money, because they have to make money in order to survive and continue.
NGOs on principle, everybody thinks it's a non-profit.
So we have to change the mindsets, not the NGOs.
So I have been basically advocating that we go away from the NGO mentality into what is now known as social enterprise, right? Which is you do business, earn money, but the product of your business should be something that always has a developmental impact in it.
Correct.
And if you can do that, and you can, there's very, very good models out there.
Right.
You can make money, you can have a profitable business, and at the same time work in these areas. For me, this is a full-time job. This is my business.
Right.
It's not an NGO. This is my business. We work in the development sector and we do it on a full-time basis.
Right.
And I think that there could be at least another 50 companies doing this, because we obviously have enough problems. So that's not the issue. And technology can definitely be a part of the solution, a huge part of the solution. We need content companies. We need people who are generating lots and lots of local content. And
when we say content, it's not just formal content that government or companies want to put out there. It's content about culture, about music, about how to farm, how to do anything.
Entertainment, fun stuff. I mean, everything. We need everything. Everything that's available on the web needs to be there in Urdu, Sindhi, Pashto. I would love to see a website that had, Sindhi songs on it, and I would love to see a Pashto cartoon, and it's not the serious stuff. It's everything. We need games, we need educational content, we need entertainment content, we need matrimonial ads, we need everything.
Correct. Well, I think there is a site called shadi.com.
No, I meant in Urdu.
I think they're translating it into Urdu.
Okay.
One of our local guys is doing that. He's set. I don't know what it's called. It's not called shadi.com. Anyway, you'll see it later this afternoon. It's going up.
But I mean, there's so much. There's a wonderful, there's a young boy, I'm sure you know him, Jangzeb. He's at Carnegie Mellon.
Yes.
And
he's working on that solution for the health sector.
So, I mean, there are so many young people who are working in these areas. What I would like to see is for them to take some of this work and turn it into an actual enterprise.
Well, I think they will. I think
so.
I think the people working in that sector and looking at these technologies are going to do that. And perhaps this is where the university professors also need to get involved, because I've seen some universities where kids, for example, Sir Syed University in Karachi, where the kids have been working on solutions for those with physical challenges. And but
I know, I saw those projects, those are fantastic.
Brilliant products, and those kids were very passionate. But are those being then commercialized, made into products, and sold not only in Pakistan but within the old region, and in in African countries where the high priced products that are produced in the West are just
Well, I think this
affordable.
is something we've been talking about all the time. I mean, for years now, which is we need an incubator.
Yes. Well,
Desperately.
not one, several.
Several of them.
Yeah. Some of this work I think LUMS is doing. They've got some projects that are not just purely commercial projects, but are also social enterprises.
So maybe we can get the ICT R&D fund to start looking at this and developing some sort of incubation process where research that they are funding can then actually also have a commercial aspect.
Well, I think that's what they aim to do.
And actually create those linkages and do the incubation as well. That would be a good starting breeding ground for something like this.
Yes, because it's so sad that they go to waste, all this passion that goes into the work that these kids are doing. And the faculty that they are working with obviously has allowed them to sort of explore this area.
Well, I think we're going to start seeing some overlapping things. I don't know if you know of this professor, she's at Zabist.
Okay.
Her name is Beena Shah.
Yes.
And she is a social economist.
Right.
And she's done some fantastic work with her students where they've done research projects on the major issues in Pakistan, social economic issues in Pakistan, in education and health and all of these areas, and then coming up with solutions.
Okay.
And a lot of those papers use technology as one of the solutions. So I think we need to now start combining some of these, and again this is cross sectorial here as well, right? So you have socioeconomic students and you have technology students, and maybe we need to get them to partner up with each other to work on collaborative projects. If we can't get the government to do it, maybe we can get our students to do it.
Well, that is what we were talking about in an earlier episode of In the Line of Wire with Adnan Haider, who's a young man who has worked in this area as early as his university days, and he was saying, our universities are not interdisciplinary. They don't encourage kids to work together. Otherwise, we would have more solutions for the development sector. And I think that's exactly what you're saying as well.
Yes.
Perhaps we need to bring Beena Shah onto the show as well and talk to her about what she's doing.
I think it's really important, and I think in the CIO policy discussion that we had, the gentleman from the ICT R&D had said categorically that one of the issues is that as we look long term, we need interdisciplinary experts. We don't need silo people. We need people who can do cross sectorial stuff.
And who can think.
Who can think. And well, let's not get into that conversation. So
oh, we can think.
So we need to get people who can really sort of step out of that box, think independently, look at things in an independent critical analysis mode, and come up with solutions. And I think for our students especially, we have to help them along that path.
Right. So mentoring is a very
really
important part of what we need to do.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's move away from there. You also started an initiative which was, I think, one of the first, if not the first, in Pakistan, which was daycare facilities. Now, why and where has that headed?
Well, everything I've done in Pakistan has really been a solution to a problem.
Right.
It started out with a problem, and then me sort of presenting a solution which nobody, of course, believed, and me saying, okay, I'm going to go out and prove it.
Correct.
So
that's the way, actually. If nobody believes it, let's do it.
Let's just
and
do
show
it.
them that it can be done. Right.
And so there was a discussion, of course, on women's empowerment and women's participation in the economy overall. And being a woman myself, having 2 children myself, and having raised them on my own, I know that the biggest problem that a woman is faced with is her kids.
Right.
If you have children and you want to work, your number one problem is, what do I do with the children? In a society like Pakistan, where you have so many external pressures as well, this is a problem that we just don't have a solution to at all.
Yeah, but many people say, oh, here it's easier because you've got grandparents and you've got uncles and aunts who can help take care of the children. So it's not like the West where you're left on your own.
No, I think that's changing. I think we have more and more nuclear families, more and more people are moving away. We have more and more families where both husband and wife work.
Correct.
And we also have more and more independent women who don't want to be, dependent on the mom-in-law.
Right.
Who don't want to ask mom-in-law for favors. So, all of these things are changing. Times are changing. And when we actually first talked about the daycare center, everybody just said, oh, daycare center, what's this and why
do we
it will
need
never work. It will never work. The classic thing that I always get in Pakistan.
Yeah, the negative attitude.
Can't happen. Pakistan hai, America nahi, can't happen here. And of course, we talked to Unilever Pakistan, and they were bowled over, and we actually did our first corporate daycare center.
Do you think that had anything to do with the fact that Unilever was being headed by a woman at that time?
I think it had everything to do with the fact that Unilever was being headed by a woman at the time. And I, absolutely salute her for taking that step, because she set a precedent, and many more companies have followed in Unilever's footsteps. And so now, 5 years later, we have 7, 8 of them running. And we have actually set the benchmark of how this is supposed to be done, the standards, the quality, all of that.
And they're very colorful, fun places. And you train your staff, right?
All our staff is trained. We've actually set up the entire system, and we're working with ILO in advocating for a separate ministry of childcare at the national level, right, with a complete national voucher program for childcare services. So any woman that makes less than 20,000 rupees a month would actually get a voucher that would help her pay for childcare services, and she can take that anywhere.
Okay, on behalf of the men, somebody has to stand up for them. Supposing you are a single father, single parent.
You have access to the daycare too.
So, okay, that's what I wanted to know.
It takes
2 to tango.
Yes. Thank you, Jahan, for saving me.
Okay, so how far has that gone? You've got about 6 or 7 facilities, right? And why hasn't it gone further? I thought it would spread like wildfire.
It hasn't spread more than that for a couple of reasons. Number one is most of the other multinationals are headed by men who seem to think that this is a female only issue, and who also seem to feel it's not important.
Okay.
The importance just isn't there yet, that awareness isn't there, and it will take time. These kinds of things take time.
Although 50% or more of our population is women, and
yes,
if we are going
but
to
only 6%
kickstart
work.
the economy, no, but that may be the reason why only 6% work.
But that is, and this is the classic issue of what comes first, the chicken or the egg.
Right, right. So we need to convince them. Another item for our advocacy campaign.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you, Shahida, for coming in and talking to us. There's
Always
so much
a pleasure.
more we can talk about, but we'll keep that for another episode.
Thank you for having me.
That was ShahidaSaleem, chairperson of many, many initiatives. And we had a fun discussion, but some very important things came out. We'll talk to Shahida again, because I don't think we've covered even 1% of the kind of things that we need discussed, that we need advocacy groups for, that we need people to be involved in. This is Jahara signing off from In the Line of Wire.